So you're getting ready for that big Agile or Scrum Business Analyst interview? Well, you've landed in exactly the right spot. Think of this as your personal playbook, the ultimate guide to absolutely acing it.
Look, you've put in the hours, you know your stuff, but then the interview. It can be pretty nerve-wracking, can it? Totally normal. But don't you worry, because today we're going to flip that script and turn any anxiety you have into rock-solid confidence.
Yep, that is the mission. We're going to crack open those common questions you're almost guaranteed to get. You know, the ones about user stories, sprint planning, backlog management, the whole deal. And I'm going to give you the clear, straightforward answers that hiring managers are dying to hear. All right, let's dive right into our first section. See, before we get into all the tricky scenario questions, you have got to have the fundamentals down cold. I'm talking about your core mission. Why? Because this is the foundation for literally every answer you're going to give. So let's kick things off with the big one, the question you're definitely going to get. What is the role of a BA on an Agile team? The best, most powerful answer you can give? You're the bridge. Simple, right? You're the one who connects the why of the business with the how of the dev team. You're that essential translator, making sure everybody is speaking the same language and heading in the same direction. But what does being a bridge actually look like day to day? Well, it's not a passive role, that's for sure. You're right there in the trenches with the product owner, hashing out the details. You're the one writing those crucial user stories, helping guide the team in sprint planning, and this is huge, you're removing any roadblocks that have to do with requirements. You are the guardian of clarity. Okay, moving on to section 2. Let's talk about mastering user stories. And listen, this isn't just another skill on your resume. This is the language of an Agile BA. You can bet your bottom dollar that every single interviewer is going to check how fluent you are. So what's a user story really? At its core, it's all about a shift in perspective. We're not talking about a boring list of features. Nope. It's a tiny story told from the eyes of the end user. It all boils down to 3 simple things: who, what, and most importantly, why. And this right here, this is the magic formula. You need to know this inside and out. As a user, I want a goal so that I get some value. This isn't just a template to fill in. No way. It forces you to think about the user, their specific goal, and the real value they're getting. Honestly, this is the very DNA of a good user story. Okay, let's look at a real-world example that ties this all together. The user story itself, super clear, but the secret sauce, the real magic, is in the acceptance criteria. See how it's written in that simple given, when, then format? This is awesome because there's no room for guessing. It's a black and white, testable scenario that tells the developers and QA exactly what done looks like. So, where do these perfect little stories come from? Well, it's a whole process, and you're at the center of it. First, you're gathering all the raw requirements. Then you put on your translator hat and shape them into that user story format. Next, you layer on those all-important acceptance criteria. And finally, you take it to the team for backlog refinement to make sure it's polished and ready to go. But how can you be sure a story is actually good to go? Here's a pro tip. Use the INVEST checklist. Think of it as your quality control stamp of approval. You want to make sure every story is independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Nailing this checklist, that's what separates the great BAs from the good ones. Okay, let's do a quick scenario. Picture this. You're 2 days into a sprint. Things are humming along, and then a developer taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I'm not really sure what this story means. The clock is ticking. What do you do?" Here's your game plan. Step 1. You stop what you're doing and give them your full attention. Clarification is now your #1 priority. Grab a whiteboard, pull up a diagram, whatever it takes to get on the same page. You can absolutely update the story's description for more clarity, but, and this is the crucial part, you do not change the scope, not mid-sprint. If it turns out there's a real gap, you take that straight to the product owner. Your job is to protect that sprint commitment. Awesome. All right, let's jump into section 3. We're going to talk about how you, as the BA, help drive the very engine of Agile, the sprints and the backlog. This is all about how you facilitate those key ceremonies that turn ideas into reality. First things first, let's clear something up that trips a lot of people up. Sprint planning versus backlog refinement. Here's the simple way to think about it. Sprint planning is about committing. The team is drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is what we're building next. Backlog refinement? That's all about preparing. It's looking ahead, teeing up stories for the next sprint so that planning meeting is as smooth as possible. Now, when you're actually in sprint planning, you are not a spectator. You are the Chief Clarity Officer. You're the one walking the team through each story, making sure every little detail and acceptance criteria is crystal clear. You should be the one asking those probing questions, like, hey, have we thought about the edge cases here? Or did we forget a task for this? Your goal is to make sure the team's commitment is built on a rock-solid foundation of understanding, not just a bunch of hopeful assumptions.
All right, here's another classic interview question for you. A key stakeholder rushes over and says, "Emergency, we need these 2 features and they both have to be in the next sprint." The pressure is on. How do you handle that without either burning out your team or letting the business down? Okay, the key thing to remember here is that it's not your job to make the decision, it's your job to facilitate a smart decision. This is where you pull out your toolkit. You could guide the conversation using something like the Moscow method. Is it a must, should, could, or won't have? Or maybe a simple value versus effort grid would work best. Your goal is to provide the structure and the clarity so that the product owner has everything they need to make the right call. Okay, so you've got the fundamentals down, you know how to handle those tricky scenarios. Now for the fun part. Section 4 is all about how to stand out. How do you go from just being another good candidate to being the one they can't forget? Let's get into the pro moves. First up, let's talk about what not to do. You want to avoid these red flags at all costs. Things like writing a story with no acceptance criteria. That's like having a map without a destination, right? Or not bringing QA into the loop early on, or missing a key dependency. These are rookie mistakes. When you talk about how you avoid these things, it screams experience. And now for the flip side, how to really impress them. Look, it's not just about listing your skills, it's about how you talk about them. Always, always emphasize collaboration. Don't just say you're good at user stories, show them with a great example. And the number 1 tip, anchor everything in a real story from your past. Nothing, and I mean nothing, beats walking them through a real-life challenge you successfully navigated. So I'm gonna leave you with one final piece of homework. Before you step into that interview room, you need to have an answer for this question. What is your go-to story? The one project, the one challenge, the one success that proves without a doubt that you are the right BA for this job. Figure that story out, perfect it, because that story is what's going to land you the offer.